One of the truly unique features of Signing Savvy is the ability to actually print a hard copy of the sign videos. So let me go ahead and bring up a sign, in this case the sign for help, and let me click on the print button. The print button is located within the playback bar below the video. What comes up is a wizard that actually walks you through the process of printing. And the first step of the wizard says select the images to print. So right now you can see there is two images. It says 1 and 2. If I click on 1, notice the video to the left moves back to that frame. If I click on 2, it moves to a different frame, and you can see the playback head moving respectively. Now, if I like these two frames, and I think this represents help, I could just go ahead and click next and continue with the wizard for printing. But if I decide that I don't actually like the frames that Signing Savvy has picked for me, I could go and use some of the controls to play the video. For example, I could use the frame advance control, and let's say I want to add a frame in the middle. So let me pick that frame, and let me go ahead and click add. And now you can see I've got 3 frames, frame 1, frame 2, and frame 3. And let's say, just for example, I want to add a third frame. So let me go back to frame 2 and advance a little bit farther. And I'll add that frame right there. And now I've got 4 frames, frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, and frame 4. And after doing this, I could say, well, I don't really need frame 3. It's really close, the difference between 3 and 4. So I can go back to 3 and click remove. Now I've got 3 frames that I'm pretty happy with that represent the sign for help. So I can go ahead and click Save Changes. Now what Save Changes does is it basically saves the frames that I've set, so when I come back to help in the future, it will be my set of frames, not the defaults as set by Signing Savvy. But at any time, I could return to the default settings by just clicking the Defaults button, which I will do now. And now I'm back to the 2 frames for the sign help. Now the include option really only comes into play when you have multiple signs that you may be sending to your print job. Right now we're only printing 1 sign, so we definitely want to include this 1 sign. So let me go ahead and click next. The next set of the wizard asks for the print options, and this relates to how you want to use your printout. And you can see there are 3 options. The first option says print the sign description on the same page. So the sign description is both the title of the sign and the description of how the sign is made. So in this case, I would print it probably for reference, where I want to see the description and the sign on the same page. The second option says on a separate page. So this would be most applicable for flashcards, where I want the sign on one page and the description on another page. And if you do have a 2-sided printer, you can print front to back. If you do not have a 2-sided printer, you could turn this option off, and then you could basically tape the 2 sides of the paper together or keep them separate. The last option says do not print. So in this case, it means do not print the sign description. Of course, this would be for the purpose of a test or a quiz where you just want the sign, and maybe you're challenging yourself to write in the word for the sign and the sign description below the sign. Now the last option asks how many signs do you want to print. In this case, we are only printing 1 sign, so 1 is really our only option. So I can go ahead and click next. It gives me a summary and tells me how I should set up my printer. So it says, print with a standard 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper and use the orientation of portrait. So I'll go ahead and click the print button. What it does is it brings up the operating system page setup options, and I'm just going to go ahead. I'm 8.5 by 11 in portrait. Click OK, and then I have my standard operating system print dialog. So if I'm ready to print, I can go ahead and click print. Okay, let's say we want to look at a phrase. So I'm going to look for the phrase, how are you doing? So I do a search for that. Signing Savvy comes up in the search results that there's not a direct sign for that. It asks if I want to show it as a phrase, which I do, so I'll click OK. And you can see it's basically making that sign by combining 2 different signs together. There is a sign for how are you and a sign for doing. So if I click the print option here, you can see now that at the top it gives me the name of the sign, in this case doing, and if I click the back arrow, you can see it says how are you. So it allows me to pick frames for each of the signs. So these are the frames it picked for how are you, click forward, and these are the 4 frames that it picked for doing. Now once again, I could go in and I can modify this. So for example, I could maybe take out these first 2 frames. So I can click that one and remove it, go here, and go here, and maybe remove that, and just keep these 2 frames. And then go ahead and click Next. Once again, it's asking me the various print options that we just went through. Let me click Next, and go ahead, and I can continue printing. Now the last thing that I want to talk about is printing word lists. So let me go ahead and click on the Colors word list. So a word list is basically a collection of a bunch of signs. So down below, if I want to actually print out this word list, it would be a real pain to have to go to each sign one at a time and print them out. So that's where the View All Signs Together option comes into play. So let me click the View All Signs Together. It's at the top of the word list under the Member options. And what we see now is we see the video with all of the signs strung together. And if I go ahead and click the print option here, once again, we see the frames for the current sign that we're on, and we can click the back arrow to page back through the signs and the forward arrow to page forward. Now this is where the include comes into play. So if, for example, I'm printing this word list, but for whatever reason I choose not to print this particular sign, the sign for color, I would uncheck include and then move to the next sign and say maybe I don't want dark either, but I want rest of the signs. And then I click Next. Now this is where the signs per page comes into play. I've got many different signs, so I'm not just printing one sign. If I choose one, it's going to print a separate piece of paper for each sign. But if I want to include multiple signs on the same piece of paper, I can go ahead and click the drop down and it will roll up a few different options. So you can see I can print 4, 6, or 9 as an option. And I'm going to go ahead and pick 9 because I know there's a lot of signs in this word list. And it says landscape suggested for that. So I go ahead and click Next. It tells me how I should set up the printer. Once again, orientation landscape. And I'll click Print. It brings up my page setup options. And I need to, in this case, pick landscape. Say OK. And here, once again, I could set up different options for my printer. For example, if I had a 2-sided printer and I wanted to print 2-sided, I could do that and go ahead and click Print. And once you're done printing, you can go ahead and click the Print button again to remove the wizard. As you can see, there are many robust features for printing out signs and word lists. Printing is a premium feature available to members.